The Royal Commission into Child Sexual Abuse exposed shocking wrongdoing in many churches. You might think, as a consequence of its revelations, all religious organisations would now be extra vigilant to ensure the safety and well-being of their worshippers. Tonight, we reveal a church that seems to have learnt nothing. It's a secretive group called The Truth, operating in regional Australia. It not only allows pedophiles into its congregation, it callously shuns the victims who've endured hell. It's called the Truth Church, but there's nothing honest about the way it operates. What happens when someone raises allegations of child sex abuse within the church?
There is a natural stance within the church to not believe the victim.
He threatened me with excommunication.
That was his response to your allegations of child sexual abuse.
That's right, yep.
Worse still, the secret fundamentalist religion allows already convicted abusers back into their fold while ignoring the victims.
They used to come around and we'd sit down and have cups of tea and they would say, oh, so-and-so said she's been molested. But we know girls make that stuff up, especially teenage girls.
Tonight, for the first time, its shameful secrets are being exposed.
It's been going on for years. The problem is it's never been opened up. This is the first time anyone's ever heard about it.
Most people don't know of the Truth Church because its hardline religion and cult-like control over worshippers means members stick to themselves. Found in mainly rural communities around the world, the church bans television, jewellery, music and dancing. Female members must wear long skirts and are forbidden from cutting their hair.
They're extremely secretive. They hold a very strong control over your mind.
Lindy England knows all too well the power the church has over its members. Her whole family were in the truth.
You're taught that everyone else outside that does not go, that isn't part of that church, are bad, not to be trusted. We were taught to be suspicious of everybody else.
Including the police?
Including the police, yes. Yep. And to go to anyone outside for any reason, it was disloyal.
So they had a lot of impact in the country, not so much in the city.
Ross Bowden was also born into the religion, which has been operating for more than 100 years and has 10,000 members in Australia.
Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers.
The preachers, or workers as they're called, travel in pairs. Giving up all of their possessions, they take a vow of celibacy and bizarrely live and preach inside worshippers' homes.
People put them on a pedestal. They kind of almost walked on water, so to speak. Some people would compare them to Jesus.
It does have cult-like characteristics, wouldn't you say?
The kind of behaviours are definitely cult-like, so the influence, the power over people, the shunning.
But the clandestine nature of the church is nothing compared to the terrible secret it hides in some country areas. The sexual abuse of children. Why are there so many pedophiles within this very small church?
There are no consequences of those kind of actions in the church.
The roll call of convicted pedophiles over the last 20 years in New South Wales and Victoria is unbelievable. Noel Harvey, a worker, 19 counts of child sexual abuse. Ernie Barry, another worker, 5 counts. Chris Chandler, the church's counsellor for abused kids, 9 counts. Cecil James Blythe, 13 counts. And Greg Aylett, whose child sexual abuse charges go back to the late 90s. Most are still associated with the church today. For every child sex abuse case that has been prosecuted, how many others do you think remain shrouded in secrecy?
There are an enormous amount of cases. You kind of get this culture of cover-up and protecting the church. We don't want the police, we don't want anyone to really know that this kind of stuff, because it kind of blows the lid on the church.
20 years ago, when Ross was still inside the church, he started hearing whispers about the horrifying child abuse cases. Appalled by the stories, he eventually decided he had to leave. Today, he's a crusader for victims, helping many escape the sect.
The only way that this can kind of end is to call it out and expose it for what it is, and to expose the corruption in senior leadership for what it is.
Lindy England was one of those who turned to Ross for help. Her father, Carl Wieland, pretended to be an upstanding member of the Truth Church. But at home, he was sexually abusing her.
There seems to be an incredibly high proportion of pedophiles within this church. Why do you think that is?
Because they separate themselves from law. They're a right to themselves.
Lindy was 18 when she finally escaped her father's abuse. But back then, she was still part of the Truth Church. So she turned to the only person she thought she could trust, her church leader, Alan Kitto.
I went to him for help. I said to him that if nothing is done, that I will go to the police. And having been brought up in that church, you don't involve the law, because we were taught that the preachers of that church, everyone is actually above the law and separate to the law, and he threatened me with excommunication.
That was his response to your allegations of child sexual abuse.
That's right. Yep. He said that the only thing that he would do would be to stop my father from attending the Sunday morning and Wednesday night meetings.
Yet he was willing to kick you out of the church.
Yes, he was. Yep.
Did he take any steps to remove your siblings from that household?
No, that was not the done thing.
So he was willing to leave vulnerable children,
yep,
rather than go to the police?
Yep.
Disgusted by his lack of concern, Lindy fled the church and went to police. Despite the church refusing to help her, her father was eventually sentenced to 15 years in jail for sexually abusing her and her sister Amanda during their entire childhood.
How do you feel about Alan Kitto today?
I feel hateful. I feel resentful. I feel like he's got to be held accountable for covering up and enabling these monsters to do what they do.
Today, Alan Kitto is head of the Truth Church in New South Wales. He also continues to support this man, the latest Truth member convicted of child sexual abuse. The courts have ruled we can't identify him despite his terrible crimes. But Kitto is happy for the convicted pedophile to still attend church meetings.
I couldn't believe it. You know, this is wrong. You're hiding pedophiles in your congregation. It's still around little children. Shouldn't be around any of them, as far as I'm concerned.
Louise Gass is one of the man's victims. When she heard the news that her abuser was still attending church, she too confronted Alan Kitto.
I rang him because I was concerned that he was still being around little children. I felt almost responsible, like he shouldn't be around little kids. So I told him everything he did. He didn't. He just palmed it off.
So it wasn't something that he took seriously?
No, not at all.
Was planning to investigate?
No, not at all.
Alan Kitto declined to be interviewed, but he sent us a statement. He says he banned Louise's abuser from going to church pending the outcome of court proceedings. But we can confirm that even after being convicted of child sexual abuse, the man still attended church meetings.
So doesn't he need to be held responsible here?
Absolutely. In my view, Alan Kitto needs to resign his position and step down. I don't think he should be either leading the sect or even in the ministry. He has failed children.
Coming up,
It was violent. I was screaming, I was kicking.
the menace of an evil predator
I was told that that's just what boys do.
and the church that looked the other way.
That's just what boys do.
Yep.
But why has a court now decided
His name should be out there. Our names are out there.
this monster needs to be protected?
What message does that send?
It's okay, you can do whatever you want.
It's okay to be a pedophile.
That's next on 60 Minutes. This man is a convicted pedophile and member of the secretive fundamentalist church known as The Truth. He's one of at least 5 convicted child molesters still involved in the religion in some country regions. Outrageously, he's still going to church meetings which children attend.
It needs to be opened up. It needs to be looked into. It needs to be fixed. You know, children need to be protected.
And the church isn't protecting them in your mind?
No.
Well, they didn't protect us, that's for sure.
And they're still not protecting them because they're still letting our pedophile go to meetings with their adult children. So no, they are definitely not protecting them.
Here we are.
All the way down in the big smoke.
Yeah.
Louise Gass and Leanne Watson were his victims. But it's not just the church that's protecting him. It's our justice system too. We can't show you his face or reveal his name because for the past 2 years, he's been fighting his way through the courts to keep his identity secret. Last month, he won. And in an extraordinary judgment, he now has the luxury of remaining nameless for the next 20 years.
So here we have our legal system protecting a pedophile.
Yes.
Where's the justice in that?
We don't know.
Trying to find that out.
Yet again,
There
we've
is no
been told
justice
that
at all.
We're not worth it, basically.
Yeah, yet again. But well, no one in Australia, I think, in their right minds would think that would be right. His name should be out there. Our names are out there. We've got nothing to be ashamed of. We did nothing wrong. We were just children.
To understand Louise and Leanne's frustration today, we need to go back almost 4 decades to when they were little girls. It's a time they'd rather forget.
We were a couple of kids.
We were only tiny. Yeah, it's amazing. You don't realise until you look at the photos how tiny we were.
Louise was 9 when she met 7-year-old Leanne through the religion that her family had just joined. For a little girl, there was nothing fun about this old-fashioned church. No television, jewellery, music or dancing.
So I lived a very, very normal life until then. I had a television, a radio, I could listen to music, I could wear pants, I could wear jewellery, I could wear makeup, I could wear my hair however I wanted to. And then my whole world just was turned upside down.
This is the house.
That's my great-grandmother's
That's your
house.
great-grandmother's house. This was where they used to have the meetings.
This weatherboard cottage used to be owned by Leanne's family and was a place of worship for the Truth Church in Wellington, New South Wales. It's where a 17-year-old church member started grooming the girls after worship meetings.
He wanted to look at our undies and he showed us his undies. And that's just how it started.
And did it escalate?
Every time it went another step, it went another step, it went another step. Until he sees all our undies. We see all of his undies. We see what's in his undies.
How do you feel thinking back to it now?
Oh,
How dare he? How dare he?
Leanne did the right thing. She complained of the abuse to some of her family, who were all members of the Truth. But cruelly, they didn't believe her.
I was told that that's just what boys do.
That's just what boys do.
Yep. I mean, they used to come around and we'd sit down and have cups of tea and they would say, oh, so-and-so is being molested, said she's being molested by her father. But we know girls make that stuff up, especially teenage girls. So who were we going to go talk to? Well, that's our higher authority.
The more the Truth Church ignored the abuse, the more brazen the abuse became. When Louise was 12, he sexually assaulted her. After that, she refused to go to church. But for Leanne, there was no escape. She was raped at 14.
It was violent. He picked me up, threw me over his shoulder, and I was hitting him that hard in the back, and I was screaming, I was kicking, I was elbowing, I was doing everything I could possibly do. But I was tiny then.
He didn't stop.
No.
Was it just the once?
Oh, no. It happened probably another 4 or 5 times after that. But the other times I didn't bother fighting. I'd given up, and it was like I just gave up on everything then.
The abuse she endured as a teenager has affected Leanne Watson her entire life. She's battled drug addiction and depression. Louise Gass couldn't get over it either. 5 years ago, she bravely went to the police.
Now, this is a phone intercept.
Then, even more courageously, at the detective's request, she secretly recorded a phone conversation with her abuser.
You ask him straight out, are you seriously admitting that you have sexually abused myself and Leanne? That's all I need. And he says, well, of course I did.
Yes. He admitted to the whole thing.
Yeah. But there's no denial.
No denial at all. No, nothing at all.
So you've got him right there.
Got him. That's, and even that's what the detective said. We've got him. And I was like, oh my God, thank God, it's over, it's finished. But it wasn't.
2 years ago, their abuser pleaded guilty to 8 counts of child sexual abuse. But if Leanne and Louise thought they'd finally get justice, they were wrong. The judge blamed the crimes on the man's sexual immaturity as a result of his conservative upbringing in the truth. He also believed there were no other victims and accepted the crimes weren't violent.
The judge said, there is no violence employed by the offender in committing any of the offences.
But that's a lie.
Well, how can anybody say that?
For me, when I was 14, I was fighting, I was punching, and I was saying no, 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 no.
His punishment was a suspended sentence. He did not spend one single night in jail.
What message does that send?
It's okay, you can do whatever you want.
It's okay to be a pedophile. And
You can
walk
do whatever
around.
you want to these girls, it doesn't matter. They're not worth it. Don't worry.
No jail time was bad enough for Louise and Leanne. But last month, when the New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal ordered his identity be suppressed for 20 years, it was an even greater insult.
Would you like to know if you're living next door to a pedophile, if you've got a little boy or girl? I think everyone has that right to know. I'd like to know why he's keeping it so highly suppressed.
Because
It
there's more
really
victims
would,
out
there's more
there.
victims out there, yeah.
Coming up,
He grooms little kids, and it's just not right.
tormented for more than 30 years.
I was just a mess. I was just shattered and in shock.
Another victim
He admitted what he did, and he got away with it.
exposes a predator's lies.
And other girls had to go through what we went through because nobody listened to us.
That's next on 60 Minutes. We're not allowed to tell you who this convicted pedophile is because the New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal has suppressed his identity. It's a decision his victims, Louise Gass and Leanne Watson, can't understand, especially after the man also avoided prison for his crimes. Back then, the judge believed there had been no other sexual misbehaviour. But we now know that's not true.
He's a pedophile. That's exactly what he is. He grooms girls, he grooms little kids, and it's just not right.
Karen Simmons is furious because she says she's another victim. Now, after 30 years of torment, she's breaking her silence.
One of the reasons he escaped prison is because the judge believed that he had not offended since assaulting Louise and Leanne. But according to your police statement, he did.
He definitely did.
You nearly 3 years later.
Yeah.
My grandparents were really close with his parents.
Unlike Leanne and Louise, Karen Simmons didn't meet her attacker through the sect-like church, The Truth.
Yeah, he was just like a big brother, I suppose, or for me, like a bit of an uncle because he was that much older than me.
Instead, he was a trusted family friend.
He would come to our family home and he'd bring his guitar over and we'd sit around the fire and he'd do a sing-along. He'd pop in sometimes and have meals. He was just around.
Looking back, do you think he was grooming you?
Yeah, definitely.
It's pretty dry and barren out here at the moment, isn't it?
Their families lived in a farming community in the central west of New South Wales. Its isolation made it the perfect setup for a predator.
I lived down that road, 2 or 3 k's up here.
When Karen was just 12 and he was 25, the pair went away on a weekend camping trip with his family. On the drive back, instead of taking Karen home, she says he brought her to this property in the middle of nowhere. It was 30 years ago, but Karen still recognises it today.
That's the house there.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
With no one around, she was completely at his mercy. It was here, she says, where she was first raped.
I was just a mess. Like, I was just shattered and in shock, really. Like, I just was trying to process what had just completely happened.
Yeah, so that's the place.
Ready to face your demons?
Yeah.
This is the first time Karen has stopped and looked at the house where her childhood was so brutally taken from her.
I can't imagine the feeling of dread you must have had every time he brought you here.
He was someone my parents trusted. You know, I'd known him since I was 6, and then I was 12, so it's not like he was a stranger, and I just felt really isolated and alone. I mean, where do you go? Like, where does a kid go? Like, you can't run. Where are you supposed to go? Like,
There was nothing you could do.
no, I know, but, you know, you just... just felt really helpless, you know.
Fearful of the consequences, Karen remained silent for 3 decades. But when she heard about Louise and Leanne's abuse, she decided it was time to go to police.
Like, he admitted what he did and he got away with it. So that makes me really angry. I want to see him do jail time. I want him held responsible for what he did.
Get on with our future then, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, one day at a time.
Karen Simmons is relieved she's finally spoken, but she's still worried her abuser could have molested even more children.
They don't just stop, do they? And I just, in my mind, I really do believe there's got to be other victims out there that he's abused.
And now another girl's had to go through what we went through because A, nobody listened to us, and B, we stopped complaining. Because nobody listened, so we stopped complaining.
Every smile, every pain.
In the meantime, the Truth Church continues to support the convicted pedophile and many others.
I'm sick of holding on.
For that reason, Louise Gass and Leanne Watson want the secretive church to be properly investigated, in the hope it will finally face up to its sins.
They call their religion the truth. This is the truth. It's about time they heard it.
To not be believed is a very hard thing when we know exactly what happened. They need to be investigated. They need to be looked into.
How much of a difference would it have made to both of you to have someone believe you back then?
Yeah, I mean, I could have fallen in love and had 3 children and lived a beautiful, happy, healthy life, but unfortunately, he took all that away. It's still there. Might go away. That's about it, really.
The head of the Truth Church, Alan Kitto, says that since 2014, it's made positive steps towards the training and awareness of ministers regarding child sexual abuse cases. Hello, I'm Alison Langdon. Thanks for watching. To keep up with the latest from 60 Minutes Australia, make sure you subscribe to our channel. You can also download the 9Now app for full episodes and other exclusive 60 Minutes content.